Hello, everyone, and today I'm going to be announcing my Super Bowl picks. I kind of did this in a live stream already when I was streaming the championship game, but I thought just to try out this new setup, I thought this would be a nice way to go, especially, like an hour, 20 minutes prior to kickoff. Um, so first, obviously, we have this isn't the greatest site, but I mean it shows it shows everything on kind of a bigger screen. So we'll just kind of go with it for now. Um, anyways, so obviously the Niners and the Ravens, they have byes, so they're safe this weekend. Um, I think let's start off with the Browns Texans game, since that's the first game that we're going to be uh, watching today. This game is so hard for me to pick because this year I've really liked watching both of these teams. Um, the Browns going with their on their fourth quarterback, and they're still playing really, really well. And then of course you've got the Texans, who everyone just slept on at the beginning of the year and no one really expected them to do anything, and here they are winning the AFC South and making it into the playoffs and having a shot at the Super Bowl. Um, I think my gut is telling me to go with, as much as I love CJ Stroud and the Texans story, I do think the Browns defense, even though it's at home for the Texans, I think the Browns defense is just going to be a little bit too much for the Texans to handle. Yeah. Um, for the next game I'm gonna pick, I'm gonna, I guess, kind of go in order as best I can because the Bills Steelers game got postponed to Monday, so that one and the Bucks Eagles game is gonna be the last one I'm gonna pick for the wild card. But the next one today is the excuse me. The next one today is the Chiefs Dolphins, and this one is kind of hard to pick because it's gonna be really cold. I think last I heard it was supposed to be like -5, which is just crazy for a football game. Um, I mean that really it gives Kansas City kind of an advantage with the weather because they're kind of used to that weather, whereas Miami's one of the hotter places in the country right now. Um, Miami also does not have a great history in playing in cold weather. I think they're like 0-10 in playing under a certain temperature. So that statistic doesn't really bode well for them in this game. But with the temperature, it's going to make it even harder for receivers to catch the ball. Um, I will say the one advantage that the Dolphins do have is they do have Tyreek, who has played for Kansas City and has played in that weather. And the Kansas City wide receiver core is not that great. So I think that will kind of even it out a little bit. I also like the Dolphins' pass defense. So even if Patrick Mahomes is able to get throws up in this game, I think the Dolphins, with Jalen Ramsey helping them out there on defense, they'll be able to possibly force some turnovers, and maybe upset Kansas City here. I think I'm going to go with the Dolphins for this one because of that. I like the way their defense is set up, and I think the Dolphins' defense will do better against Kansas City's offense than Kansas City's defense will against the Dolphins' offense. I think the Dolphins' offense is going to be too fast and overwhelming. They can run the ball well. They can move the ball really fast with their receiving core. I think the Dolphins just overwhelm them in this game, even though it's at Arrowhead. Bills Steelers, I think. Well, actually, no. We're gonna skip that one. I'll go back to that one later, because that kind of changed since the weather conditions are gonna be a little bit different, which I think was gonna have some impact on the game. Next, I want to do the Cowboys Packers. Um, Now this one is interesting because the Packers right now are 5-0 in uh, AT&T Stadium. I think since 2012, like every time they've played there, they've won, including the Packers' last Super Bowl victory in, I believe, 2011. But the Cowboys this year have been undefeated at home, which is kind of controversial because of the Detroit game. Uh, Detroit arguably should have won that game, but it got turned into a Cowboys win because of a officiating call. So the Cowboys being undefeated at home is a little bit debatable. But I think the Packers, they're still pretty young this year. This is Jordan Love's first time in the playoffs. Um, and the Cowboys, they're pretty inconsistent, but I think they at least make it past the first round. So this time I'm going to give it to the Cowboys for this one, or for this matchup. The Lions and the Rams. Now, this one is interesting because you have the two quarterbacks going up against their former teams for the first time. And the Lions also hosting a playoff game for the first time in like 30 years, which is also crazy. And the Lions also being the NFC North champions for the first time ever because they used to be in the NFC Central. And ever since they moved to the NFC North, they have not won an NFC North championship. This has been kind of a historic season for Detroit. Detroit's been kind of slowly climbing the ladder, and I think if memory serves, I believe they lost their first game last year. So I think this time, even though Matt Stafford's coming back to town and he wants to get a win back in his old team's territory, I think Jared Goff gets revenge on his former team and takes the Lions into the divisional round to play the 49ers. And the last matchup for the NFC wildcard is the Bucks versus Eagles, which is kind of an interesting matchup because the Eagles have been playing really bad lately, and the Bucks are in arguably the worst division in the NFL right now, which is the NFC South. Them being in the playoffs is kind of debatable, just because you basically just have to go 9-8 to make it in if you're in the NFC South. It's kind of a cheat code, to be completely honest. But the Buccaneers, they've been playing not bad ball. Baker's doing well down there. I think the Eagles stock for me has just been falling a little bit too low. So even though the Buccaneers are ranked higher than the Eagles, I think the Buccaneers were not originally expected to win this matchup. But I think the Buccaneers can shock the Eagles here, and I think they're going to get the win. They do also have the home field advantage, which is another thing as well. And then for the last matchup, for the wild card for AFC and NFC, it's the Bills versus Steelers. I think either way I was going to go with the Bills, but I think if it was when it was originally going to be played, I think it would have been closer. But I think this time or at least since the date is moved, I think the Bills are going to have a better shot. And I say that because I remember, if memory serves correctly, last year when the Bills played in a snow game, the Bengals just ran all over them. And it was an anticipated rematch for both those teams after Damar Hamlin went down on the field and they canceled the game. It was a very anticipated rematch, and the Bengals ended up winning in that rematch. So I don't think the Bills wanted another snow game, even though it would have been at their stadium. But I think either way the Bills win. I think it's going to be not as close of a matchup. But the Steelers defense also, they're also missing a key player in J.J. Watt. I think that is also going to have a very big impact on the game against the Bills. All right, onto the divisional round. We have, I'm going to go just from left to right here. We've got the Niners versus the Buccaneers. The Niners, they are just absolutely loaded with weapons and great defensive players. I don't think this game is going to be close. I'm going to take the 49ers here. They're loaded at the wide receiver position. Their tight ends are great. They've got Christian McCaffrey, who's MVP caliber running back. They've got Brock Purdy, who plays well in the system and is also a great quarterback and is putting up really good numbers. I think everything is, and it's also at San Francisco, so I think it's going to be, everything is just in line for the 49ers to win that game. There's just no way they don't win that game. And I know ever since last year after Brock Purdy got injured in the beginning of the game against the Eagles in the conference championship, the Niners have been looking for revenge to make it back into the Super Bowl. And, they're on the warpath. And the Buccaneers are just one block in the way right now. One little, or I guess more like a tiny stone in this case. Then we've got a anticipated rematch with the Cowboys and the Lions. And this will be at Dallas again since the Cowboys are the higher seed. I think Detroit is going to be really hungry. I know Detroit's kind of a young team, but the Cowboys also are not the most consistent with their play. They're known to choke in the playoffs. They didn't do too bad last year, but, they did get stopped in the divisional round. But I think Detroit's going to rough them up a bit, especially after their previous matchup. And also, this will give the Cowboys an opportunity. I think if the Cowboys lose, they're probably going to fire their coach and maybe hire Bill Belichick. I think that would be just to add to the craziness of what's going on with the coaching, retiring and hiring that's been happening in football, not just NFL, but college as well. So give me the Lions here for the last matchup in the divisional round for the NFC. Now onto the AFC, we have the Bills versus the Browns, or at least that's just for my prediction. We don't know if that's going to be the matchup just yet. But I think the Browns could shock the Bills here in this matchup. The Browns defense has just been amazing this year. They have just locked down pretty much every single team that they've played. They beat the Niners, who are, they're the 1 seed in the NFC right now. The Bills are, even against kind of weaker defenses, they're turnover prone. They're high scoring, but they're also a very high turnover team. I think the Browns defense will capitalize on that. I think the Browns upset the Bills at home in this matchup. So I'm going to take the Browns. Then for the last divisional round matchup, we have the Ravens versus Dolphins. And I think the Ravens are just going to absolutely dog walk the Dolphins. It's not kind of like the Niners and the Bucks. It's not going to be close. The Dolphins, they're already pretty banged up. I think they have enough to beat the Chiefs, but I don't think it's going to be nearly enough to even keep up with the Ravens to keep it close. The Ravens defense, like the Browns, has just been locking down every single team they've played. And their offense has just been running on all cylinders. There's no way the Ravens lose. All right, now I've got the conference championships. Both 1 seeds make it through, and we've got a 3 seed in the Lions and a 5 seed in the Browns. And this is where things are going to kind of get a little bit interesting. So for the NFC, this is the not so interesting part that I'm talking about. That's going to kind of happen a little bit later. We have the Lions versus the Niners. I think after the matchup against the Cowboys, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions succumbed to a few injuries in that matchup. I imagine just because I imagine they're going to be playing a lot more aggressively. So, yeah, and when that happens, like especially towards the end of the season, it's really easy to get injured. I mean, just like at both the NFL level and the college level, it's a lot easier to get injured at the end of the season than it is at the beginning of the season because your body is more tired and broken down at the end of the season than the beginning. Like you're a lot more fresh at the beginning. So I think the Niners, their depth and their experience is going to be the factor. They're also going to have the home field advantage. I think those are going to be the factors that are going to determine the outcome. I think it'll be pretty close, but give me the Niners in this matchup. And then for the AFC Championship. Now, I know it looks like it's setting up to, match the whole color scheme for the Super Bowl logo. The colors have matched the past 3 years. However, I think this time that little tradition gets broken. I think the Browns have beaten the Ravens already once this year. I think they do it again. Even though it's at Baltimore. I think the storyline for me is that Joe Flacco is going to run it back to the Super Bowl against the 49ers, but with a different team. The Ravens, they've been doing really well, but that Browns defense, I think, will be a little bit too much for the Ravens offense. Odell Beckham Jr. he's kind of injury prone. I remember in the Super Bowl matchup against the Bengals, he got injured after like the first or second drive. He scored a touchdown, but other than that, he didn't have the impact that he was supposed to have. He would have had a bigger impact if he was on the field than if he was off the field, just because it opened up like just him and Cooper Kupp at the wide receiver core. You put them at both ends, like you just can't really stop that, especially that year. But I think this time, I think Joe Flacco means business. The Browns defense means business. I think they're going to lock up the Ravens, and the Ravens are going to crumble under the pressure. They're going to succumb to a few injuries, and the Browns are going to win the AFC Championship and make it to the Super Bowl for the first time ever. And then you have the rematch between Joe Flacco, but with a different team and him in a different uniform, versus the 49ers in a Super Bowl that happened 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, it was Harbaugh versus Harbaugh. So in a way, it's kind of poetic because we've seen the success that Michigan had with Jim Harbaugh, and now like the quarterback of John Harbaugh is going on to the Super Bowl to face off against his younger brother's old team. Now, this one is a little hard to predict. Well, actually, no, because the Browns and the Niners have already played this year. Now, it is hard to beat the same team twice. The Super Bowl is in Vegas, so San Francisco is going to have a little bit of a home field advantage. But in the Super Bowl, the home field doesn't really have as much meaning because the tickets are so expensive and you mostly only see celebrities at the Super Bowl. Most people watch it at home, even though like we want to, obviously we want to go to the Super Bowl, but I mean those tickets, they're just wicked expensive. So yeah, most of the time you only ever see a boatload of celebrities at the Super Bowl. But I think it would be quite, I mean, just because it's been such a historic year for the Browns already, and I know Brock Purdy, I so badly want this to happen. I feel like this would be so cool to see. But give me the Browns to win the Super Bowl. Call me crazy. Call me crazy. But I think the Browns are going to win the Super Bowl. I mean, they've just the adversity they've gone through this year. They're literally on quarterback number 4. Number 4. They went through 3 other people, including their starter. They found Joe Flacco basically just like on his couch at home, enjoying life, enjoying retirement. Then they brought him out of retirement and he's playing well in the system. I mean, I don't see how the Browns can go wrong this year. I think if any year is their year, it is their year. This is the year the Browns are going to win their first Super Bowl.